Okay, we're just minutes away now from our coverage of the Women's All-Round Gymnastics Championship. Now, these women's finals have become, over the years, one of the biggest nights of the Olympics for American sports fans. And that's pretty remarkable when you consider the history of the sport. The Soviet Union had always dominated the sport of women's gymnastics. They had the training, they had the athletes, they had the coaching, and they had all the support. And that brought them the medals, and many of them. It was a different story for the United States in the 1948 Olympic Games in London, but remember, the USSR was not in attendance. But the Americans did win a team bronze medal in that Olympics. It was to be America's last for nearly 4 decades. The 50s and 60s were truly the dark ages of women's gymnastics in the United States. Early American gymnasts were often left unprepared for the large international competitions.
The Olympics especially were high pressure for us because we didn't have coaches, and they would put us maybe in a training camp for 3 weeks, and you didn't have what you had at home, and you didn't have enough equipment. So actually, you'd be worse by the time you got to the Olympics than you had been at the time you made the team. That was frustrating.
There was another problem facing the early gymnasts. America was simply uninterested in the sport. National championships were often held at high school gymnasiums, and only a handful of loyalists would attend.
Got nobody to come to a gymnastics event. World championship now. If they'd had a world championship in this country, you probably wouldn't have filled a typical high school gym. It was an absolute unknown sport.
When people ask me about, you know, what do you do in gymnastics? What is that, tumbling? What was that, like a circus?
Kathy Rigby's silver medal at the World Championships failed to bring women's gymnastics to the American mainstream. Ironically, it took a young Soviet girl to capture the American television audience and change the sport forever.
Olga Korbut, I'm telling you, Olga Korbut was magic. She made things happen all over the world. She created a sport that it was there waiting to be created.
Ironic, isn't it, that a little Soviet girl would become the central figure, in a way, in the history of American gymnastics. And 20 years ago, who would have guessed that tonight Olga would watch this competition from her home in Atlanta, Georgia, of all places? Who knew the turns her life would take? The Chernobyl nuclear disaster within range of her Belarusian home in 1986. The friends and family she saw victimized by radioactive fallout. Olga's decision to send her only son to safety in the United States in 1990, and then her own move to Atlanta a year after that. She taught gymnastics, and she began raising money for the Chernobyl victims, who are still so much on her mind. This is a story not nearly as well known as her Olympic exploits, a story best told now in the lyrics of Jackson Browne.